Hi, this is Teresa from Pumpkin Glass, and I had some requests to do a tutorial for a bracelet I posted a couple weeks ago on Facebook. So we're going to do that today. This was the bracelet that I posted, and let's get started. All right, so this is the bracelet we're going to make with a few changes. This is the one that I posted. It's got a filigree piece here on the front. Whoops. I'm new at doing videos, so bear with me. Couple crystals on each side hold the filigree piece in place, and then it's made with 3mm leather and 1.5 going into a magnet clasp. So I'm going to change it a little bit today and make a broader one. So you will need a magnetic clasp. This one is approximately twice the size of the other one. So it is a 20mm clasp. And we're going to be using some half round silver plated craft wire, about 16 inches of that. A couple 8 or 6mm beads. In this case, we're going to use some coral. A couple little 4mm spacer beads in pewter. We're going to wire this crisscross bar to our leather. It's a piece from Tierracast. And for the small leather, instead of the round, we're going to use this 5 by 2mm flat leather. And in the center, the 10mm leather with that in between. And other than that, you'll just need a few supplies, some gap filling super glue. I like this Zap-A-Gap. It's a medium viscosity gel that dries quickly and fills in the extra gap in the clasp around the leather. And something to cut your leather and wire with, and a pair of chain nose pliers. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is cut our leather. This is a pretty flat bracelet. There's not a lot of height to it. So generally, if you cut the leather your wrist size, the extra space there is in the clasp usually allows you just the right fit. But this one's a little wide, so we're going to make it about 1/4 inch bigger. So say an average wrist is about 6.5. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this thinner leather here at 6 3/4. And then use the same measurement for, actually there's a little section here in front. It's got something funny on it. So we're going to trim that off so we have a nice clean edge to use. And cut this one at 6 3/4 also. All right, so we're going to want to glue this into the end of the clasp. And some people have complained that it's hard for them to hold everything together and get it stuck in there with the glue running around. So sometimes what I do is I take a little piece of Scotch tape and go ahead and add my pieces of leather to it. Whoops. Just to kind of hold them together. And it does seem especially helpful when you're using round leather. Sometimes it wants to roll around and not stay next to thick stuff. And we can always cut then what's extra on the back off when we take it out of the clasp. I'm going to take my Zap-A-Gap, not glap, glue here, And hopefully you can, no, I'm too far over. Hopefully you can see that now. And I'm going to drop about 3 good sized drops in there. Yeah, my tape's not working so well. Let me push all those in there. And I'm going to hold that together for about a minute. This glue takes a little while to cure because it is thicker. I think it takes about 15 minutes, but after about a minute, it's held in place well enough. So I'm gonna not bore you with this part. We'll pause and I'll be back as soon as the glue is dry on each end. All right, my leather is now attached in my clasp and looks nice. Actually, this bracelet would be cute without anything on it. Or you could embellish these individual pieces, but we're gonna wrap something around the whole thing. Undo my magnet here. And I left the tape on one side so that you could see that when you're finished, you can just hook this down so it's not waving around in front of the camera. You can just kind of tear this extra off back here and clean that end up. All right, so next thing we're going to do is cut the wire so that we can wrap our piece on the front. So we're going to need that and our spacers and a couple coral beads. And again, this is half round 18 gauge wire that is silver plated, and it has a tarnish resistant finish on it. Now the little bracelet that I showed you earlier, this one where we just poke the wire through the filigree, I only used 4 inches of wire on each side, but it's a narrow bracelet. So I'm going to use twice that for this wider bracelet. I'm cutting 2 8-inch pieces. And when you use it, you want to make sure that you're using it with the half round side up. That is the right side of the wire. And I'm not sure you can even see this, but the flat side of the wire, see how it kind of has a real bright, shiny finish, and you can see that it's flat. And the other side, the half round, has more of a dome to it. I'm not sure if this is showing up in my camera, but you can definitely. So I have my 8-inch piece of half round wire here, and I'm gonna string a spacer on, a bead in the center and another spacer, and I'm going to center that up on the wire so that my ends are relatively even, and just give it a little bit of a bend, and then take my crisscross here. Oops. Got to keep them in the middle while I string my tails through. There we go. I'm going to grab those and pull it up to keep my beads centered. And bend the tails out so that we'll be ready to wrap the bracelet. You know, the bracelet's a little bit wider than this. Now we probably should have marked where the center is of our bracelet here. so we know where to start wrapping. And looks like I'm at about 7.5 inches. So I'm gonna put just a little black on black mark at 3 3/4 to center that piece on. And I always have trouble getting this first wrap tight. So this is what we're gonna do, actually with all of the wraps, so we get them nice and tight. I've got this pinched on top of the bracelet with my finger, and I'm gonna pull the edge, or the wire rather, on each side straight down just to kind of anchor it in place. And we're not wrapping round and round, we're wrapping straight down, and then we're bringing the wire over flat across the back of the bracelet. Give it an extra push to bend that wire over. And then same thing on this side. I'm gonna make sure it's pulled up snug and make a right angle bend down the width of the leather. Bring it straight across the front. And then one more time on this side. And I continue kind of pinching my leather together to make sure that I'm not pulling so snugly that I make my leather start overlapping. And bring that across straight. And actually that was a little too snug. If you saw, my leather was kind of pulling up. So I'm just going to loosen that up a little bit. And I'm going to cut this first piece off on the back here, in from the edge so it doesn't show. And just push that down for now with my fingers. So it looks like that. And then I'm going to switch to the other piece and kind of overwrap across here to catch that tail. So let me check, see where the heck my mark went for the center of the bracelet. Okay, we're still good. So we're still centered. Actually, I need to move it over just a touch. All right, so I'm going to take my other piece, and I don't want it to cross on the front. So even though I'm going to be wrapping this direction, I don't want to bring this over here and make a cross here on the edge. So I'm going to go straight back and down with this one. And then when I flip it on the back, I'm going to cross over so that I'm catching that tail on the back. And come back to the front, make my bend across the front, my bend, go across the back, and we're going to have enough wire for one last wrap here. And I pulled it too tight. See, I make mistakes just like everybody else. So I'm going to back it out. It's not the end of the world. And rewrap this front part with a little bit less tension. And do that last bend. Turn it around and bend that end over to tuck in. Okay, so let's do the other half of the bracelet. And center up my beads. And I suppose I could have put both wires through before I started, but I think what would happen is you'd be constantly fussing with the wires on the other side getting in your way. So it doesn't seem too tough just to go ahead and add them with the first side on the bracelet. And again, I think this time, instead of cutting off so much wire at the beginning, I'm gonna move my beads over so that that first piece that I'm wrapping is, I guess I should have decided this first, a little bit shorter than the other side. All right, so here's my shorter one. So brought that straight down on this edge and make a bend across the back. And you could also, if you're more comfortable, this is really soft wire, so you don't really have to use pliers, but if you're more comfortable with your pliers, you could take your chain nose pliers here and pull this up tight with the wire right here on the edge of your bracelet. Leave, I don't know if you can see that, just a tiny bit of gap for the pliers, and make your bend with your pliers over the side instead, and then come up over the edge. I don't know, seems like it's prone to being a little bit looser that way, so I prefer to do it just with my fingers. So here's my last bend over the side for this piece. I'm going to come up the back and again trim it just short of the edge. Make sure this is pulled snug, and I'm going to bend my second one over the side, across the back, over the top of that wire that I've cut to wrap him in place. And then do a couple more wraps. Kind of keeping everything held flat and together. And let's see, I've got 4 wraps on this side, so I have one more to do on the opposite side. This is my last piece. Oh yeah, that worked better. I've got a longer tail now to deal with on the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off and take my chain nose pliers here, get that out of the way, and push that tail down nice and firm, and I use the nose of my pliers to shove that wire underneath. And this one is actually, the one I wrapped over is sticking up a little bit higher than I would like. I don't know if you can see that. If you look at it from an angle, you can see that he's kind of sticking out right here. So I'm going to come in and cut that a little bit shorter. Need to get a hold of it to pull it out and trim it off. And then push it back down there underneath the other wires, and this one on this side seems to be okay. So there. So I've got my bracelet wrapped in the middle. And technically your wrist isn't the same distance around from this side to the center as it is from this side to the center. This side of your wrist is smaller. So if you wrap your if you make your bracelets a little off center, which this one is, the shorter side is the side that should go on that side, and then the longer side over here. And my wrist is a little bit bigger than I measured for, but you can see how this is exactly in the center that way. If you make this equal, I've noticed, you're constantly adjusting your bracelet because this isn't in the center. So it worked out that it slid a little bit, but if you wanted to fix it, you could just scooch these over. They're not that tight, and then press them down again with your pliers. So there's our bracelet. Thanks for tuning in. We have all the supplies here at Pumpkin Glass, and I will be posting some kits at pumpkinglass.com with some different colors if you would like to order it there, along with a link to the video. Thanks for watching.